Imagine dedicating your entire life to a dream and watching that dream refuse to come true. Not for a year, not for 5 years, but for decades. Now imagine waking up every morning knowing that somewhere out there, thousands of people with less experience, less discipline, and less determination are getting the opportunities you've spent your entire life chasing. Most people would quit. Most people would eventually convince themselves that the dream was never meant to be. Most people would settle. Morgan Freeman did not. Today, the world knows him as one of the greatest actors ever to step in front of a camera. His voice is instantly recognizable. His presence commands attention. His career spans generations. Millions of people see him as a symbol of wisdom, success, and excellence. But what very few people understand is that Morgan Freeman spent most of his life being ignored. Before the awards, before the fame, before Hollywood finally noticed him, there was a man fighting a battle nobody could see. A battle against time. A battle against disappointment. A battle against the growing fear that maybe success would never arrive. What makes this story extraordinary is not simply what Morgan Freeman achieved. It is when he achieved it. In an industry obsessed with youth, speed, and instant recognition, Freeman became living proof that some people are not late. They are simply being prepared for something bigger. While others rushed toward fame, he was developing something much more valuable. Patience, depth, resilience, perspective. The kind of qualities that cannot be learned in a classroom or bought with money. They can only be forged through years of struggle. And those years came with a price. There were moments when his future seemed uncertain, moments when the dream looked farther away than ever, moments when giving up would have been the most reasonable decision. Yet somehow he kept moving forward. One audition at a time, one rejection at a time, 1 year at a time. The remarkable truth is that the very years that appeared to be holding him back were secretly building the foundation of everything he would later become. And when opportunity finally arrived, Morgan Freeman was no longer merely an actor searching for a break. He had become something far more powerful, someone impossible to ignore. His story challenges one of the most dangerous beliefs in modern life, the idea that if success doesn't come quickly, it will never come at all. Because sometimes the greatest victories belong to the people who stay in the fight long after everyone else has walked away. And as you're about to discover, Morgan Freeman's journey is not really a story about acting. It's a story about time, about perseverance, and about what can happen when a person refuses to surrender their dream, no matter how long the world makes them wait. The man who succeeded too late for most people. Success has a deadline. At least, that's what most people believe. By the time someone reaches their 30s, society begins asking questions. By their 40s, the pressure becomes even greater. And if major success hasn't arrived by then, many quietly assume it never will. Morgan Freeman lived through that pressure for years. Long before the world knew his name, he found himself trapped in a reality that few ambitious people are prepared to face. He had talent. He had passion. He had a dream that refused to disappear. Yet none of those things seemed to be producing the results he expected. As the years passed, something even more painful began happening. Time itself became his enemy. Younger actors were appearing everywhere. New faces were landing opportunities. Careers were being launched, while his own seemed permanently stuck in place. Every passing year created a difficult question. How long should a person keep believing? It's easy to chase a dream when progress is visible. It's much harder when the evidence suggests nothing is changing. Morgan Freeman wasn't facing a single rejection. He was facing thousands of small disappointments spread across years. Auditions that led nowhere, opportunities that disappeared, promises that never materialized. The kind of setbacks that rarely make headlines, but slowly wear down a person's confidence. The dangerous part wasn't failure itself. The dangerous part was the growing possibility that failure might become permanent. Many people eventually accept limitations that don't actually exist. They stop because they assume life has already made its decision. Morgan Freeman refused to do that. What separated him from countless others wasn't extraordinary luck or secret connections. It was his ability to continue moving forward while receiving almost no external proof that success was coming. That kind of perseverance is rare. Most people can survive a difficult year, Few can survive decades of uncertainty, yet during those years, something important was happening beneath the surface. While the world measured success through fame, money, and recognition, Freeman was developing qualities that couldn't be measured so easily. Experience, emotional depth, patience, discipline, the very characteristics that would later make him unforgettable. Ironically, the delay that seemed to be destroying his dream was actually shaping it. The years that looked like evidence of failure were becoming the source of his future strength. And eventually a moment would arrive that changed everything, a moment when all those invisible years suddenly began to matter, a moment that would reveal why Morgan Freeman's greatest obstacle had never been his lack of opportunity. It had been his willingness to outlast the clock itself. Growing up with dreams nobody took seriously, long before Morgan Freeman faced rejection in Hollywood, he encountered something much more subtle, the quiet dismissal of a dream. As a young boy growing up in Mississippi during a time of deep social and economic challenges, the future did not seem filled with endless possibilities. Opportunities were limited, expectations were modest. Most people focused on practical survival rather than distant ambitions. Yet somewhere inside that young boy, a different vision was taking shape. Freeman discovered something that immediately captured his imagination: stories, characters, performance. The ability to step into another person's life and make audiences feel something real. For him, acting wasn't simply entertainment, it was freedom. A chance to escape ordinary circumstances and explore worlds far beyond his immediate surroundings. The problem was that dreams are often judged by the reality surrounding them. And in Morgan Freeman's world, becoming a successful actor did not seem like a realistic path. Many people around him viewed acting as something distant, something uncertain, something reserved for other people living in other places. Not for a young boy from Mississippi, not for someone with limited resources, not for someone facing obstacles that few future movie stars would ever understand. But dreams have a strange way of surviving, even when nobody else sees them, even when logic argues against them, even when circumstances appear completely unfavorable. The desire remained. As he grew older, Freeman carried that dream with him, though the path forward was far from clear. There was no roadmap, no guarantee, no evidence that success was waiting ahead. Only belief. And belief can be a fragile thing, especially when life begins demanding practical decisions. Like many young people chasing uncertain ambitions, Freeman found himself pulled between two competing realities: the life he had and the life he imagined. One offered stability, the other offered possibility. Most people eventually choose stability, not because they lack courage, but because uncertainty becomes exhausting. Yet something inside Morgan Freeman refused to let go. The dream remained alive, even when it seemed unreasonable, even when it looked impossible. And that decision to keep carrying the dream long before there was any proof it could become reality would shape everything that followed. Because the greatest challenge was never learning how to act. The greatest challenge was protecting a vision that almost nobody else believed in. And soon, Freeman would discover that holding on to a dream is one thing. Surviving what comes after it begins to test you is something entirely different. The years ahead would force him to answer a question that changes the course of countless lives. What do you do when the years that looked like wasted time? If you look at Morgan Freeman's career today, it's easy to connect the dots. The acclaimed performances, the awards, the respect, the legendary status. But life never feels that clear while you're living it. For Morgan Freeman, there was a long period when the future looked less like a success story and more like a collection of unfinished attempts. Years passed, then more years. The dream was still alive, but the results remained frustratingly small. This is the stage of every great story that most people never talk about. The stretch of time where nothing appears to be happening. The period where effort and reward seem completely disconnected. To outsiders, it can look like failure. To the person living it, it can feel even worse. It can feel like stagnation. Morgan Freeman worked various jobs. He took acting opportunities when he could find them. He continued developing his craft while trying to build a life at the same time. There were no headlines celebrating his persistence, No crowds applauding his determination. No guarantees that any of it would eventually matter. Every year brought the same challenge: continue or quit, continue or quit, continue or quit. The question returned over and over again, and what made it difficult was that there was never a dramatic moment that forced the decision. No single catastrophe, no single breakthrough, just the slow passage of time, the kind of challenge that quietly defeats many talented people. Because dramatic failures can be motivating, silent failures are far more dangerous. They create doubt, they create fatigue, they create the temptation to lower expectations and accept a smaller version of life. Yet during these seemingly unremarkable years, Freeman was gaining something that success often prevents people from developing: range, depth, understanding. He wasn't simply learning lines, he was learning people, learning emotions, learning how disappointment feels, learning how perseverance feels, learning what happens inside a human being when hope is tested again and again. Those lessons would eventually become visible on screen. Audiences would later praise the authenticity of his performances without realizing where much of that authenticity came from. It came from experience, real experience, the kind that cannot be taught. The irony is almost impossible to miss. The years that looked wasted were not wasted at all. They were producing the very qualities that would later separate Morgan Freeman from countless other actors. But there was no way for him to see the full picture at the time. Like anyone moving through uncertainty, he could only take the next step, and the next and the next, without knowing that somewhere ahead, an unexpected challenge was waiting. A challenge even more painful than professional failure. Because soon, Morgan Freeman would face something many ambitious people secretly fear more than rejection itself: watching everyone else move ahead while he remained invisible. Dream survives, but success never seems to arrive. Watching others win while he stayed invisible. Failure is difficult, but there is something that often hurts even more: watching other people succeed while you remain exactly where you started. For Morgan Freeman, this became one of the most challenging psychological battles of his entire journey. As the years passed, he wasn't living in isolation. He could see what was happening around him. New actors were arriving, fresh faces were being discovered, careers were taking off, dreams were becoming reality for other people. Meanwhile, his own breakthrough remained frustratingly out of reach. This is the moment where many stories end, not because the person lacks talent, not because they stop working, but because comparison slowly begins to poison their perspective. At first, the comparison seems harmless. You tell yourself you're simply observing, learning, evaluating. Then something changes. Every success story starts feeling personal. Every promotion becomes a reminder. Every opportunity someone else receives feels like evidence that you are being left behind. The dangerous part is that comparison creates an illusion. It makes you believe everyone else's journey is moving faster than yours. It convinces you that you are late, that you missed your chance, that the window has already closed. Morgan Freeman could have fallen into that trap. Few people would have blamed him if he had. After all, the evidence seemed overwhelming. Year after year, Hollywood continued moving forward. The industry evolved. New stars emerged. Audiences changed. And still, he waited. What makes this chapter remarkable is not that Freeman avoided frustration. He was human. Of course he experienced doubt. Of course he questioned the future. Of course there were moments when the distance between where he was and where he wanted to be felt unbearable. The difference was what he did with those emotions. Instead of allowing comparison to destroy his ambition, he transformed it into observation. He studied, he learned, he watched how others performed, how they communicated, how they handled opportunities. While many people become bitter when they feel overlooked, Freeman remained a student. That decision changed everything. Because bitterness closes doors, curiosity opens them. And while the world saw an actor who hadn't yet broken through, something powerful was quietly happening beneath the surface. He was accumulating knowledge, perspective, emotional intelligence, the very tools that would later allow him to connect with audiences in a way few actors ever could. Still, a deeper challenge was approaching, one that had nothing to do with competition, nothing to do with recognition, nothing to do with other actors. Soon Morgan Freeman would reach a point where the greatest battle was no longer against the industry. It was against his own expectations, and that battle would force him to make a decision that ultimately changed the direction of his entire life. The power of mastering the craft in the shadows. At some point, Morgan Freeman began to understand a truth that many people never discover. Recognition and growth are not the same thing. The world often celebrates visible success, the promotion, the award, the breakthrough, the applause. But the most important development frequently happens where nobody is watching, in the shadows. For years, Freeman lived in that space, a place without headlines, without widespread recognition, without the validation that most people rely on to measure progress. And yet, instead of seeing those years as punishment, he gradually turned them into preparation. This shift was subtle but powerful. Many people spend their lives chasing attention. Morgan Freeman focused on mastery. While others worried about being seen, he became obsessed with becoming better. Better at understanding human behavior, better at communicating emotion, better at bringing authenticity to every performance. He wasn't building a career, he was building a foundation, and foundations are rarely exciting while they are being constructed. Nobody celebrates the concrete beneath a skyscraper. People admire the building after it reaches the sky, but without the unseen work below, the entire structure collapses. The same principle was shaping Freeman's life. Each small role became an opportunity, each challenge became a lesson, each setback became another chance to sharpen skills that would eventually distinguish him from everyone around him. What makes this stage so important is that there was still no guarantee of success. Mastery does not automatically produce rewards. Many talented people never receive the opportunities they deserve. Freeman understood this, yet he continued anyway. That decision reveals something profound about his character. He stopped making effort dependent on immediate results. He stopped demanding instant proof that the journey was worth it. Instead, he committed himself to excellence, regardless of who was paying attention. That mindset is rare. Most people work hardest when rewards are visible. Few maintain that level of commitment when nobody is watching. But hidden excellence has a strange effect. Over time, it becomes impossible to hide. The skills become too refined, the confidence becomes too natural, the presence becomes too powerful. Eventually, opportunities begin to notice what audiences have not yet seen. And that is exactly what was beginning to happen. The years spent in obscurity were creating an actor unlike any other. Not because he had avoided hardship, because he had absorbed it. Not because he had escaped failure, because he had learned from it, and soon a critical transformation would occur. A transformation that had nothing to do with acting ability, nothing to do with Hollywood, nothing to do with talent. It was a shift inside his own mind, the moment Morgan Freeman stopped being afraid of failure altogether. And when that happened, everything started to change. The moment failure stopped scaring him. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid failure. They carefully plan their decisions. They protect their reputation. They search for certainty before taking action, and without realizing it, they become prisoners of fear. Morgan Freeman's journey took him in a different direction. After years of rejection, disappointment, and unmet expectations, something unexpected began to happen. Failure started losing its power over him. Not because success had finally arrived. It hadn't. Not because life suddenly became easier. It didn't. The change happened because repeated exposure had transformed his relationship with uncertainty. The thing he had feared for so long was no longer a distant threat. He had already lived through it, again and again, and he was still standing. This realization created a profound shift. For years, part of the emotional burden came from wondering what would happen if things didn't work out. But eventually, Freeman understood something liberating. The worst-case scenario was not nearly as terrifying as he had imagined. He had experienced rejection. He had experienced setbacks. He had experienced periods where progress seemed invisible. Yet none of those experiences had destroyed him. Instead, they had strengthened him. Once that truth became clear, a new level of confidence emerged. Not the confidence that comes from winning, the confidence that comes from surviving. There is a difference. Winning can make a person feel powerful. Surviving teaches them they are resilient, and resilience is far more valuable because it doesn't depend on circumstances, it travels with you wherever you go. As Freeman's fear began to fade, so did his dependence on approval. He no longer needed every opportunity to succeed. He no longer viewed every rejection as a personal verdict on his worth. He stopped carrying the crushing pressure that had accompanied him for so many years. Instead of asking, "What if I fail?" he started focusing on a different question. "What can I learn?" That subtle change transformed the way he approached his craft. His performances became freer, his decisions became bolder, his presence became stronger. The anxiety that often limits talented people began to disappear, and in its place came authenticity. Ironically, the less desperate he became for success, the more prepared he was to receive it. Because desperation narrows vision, confidence expands it. By this stage, Morgan Freeman was no longer chasing validation. He was becoming the best version of himself, whether recognition arrived or not. That inner transformation would soon collide with something he had been waiting for almost his entire life. An opportunity, not a miracle, not luck. An opportunity that finally arrived at the exact moment he was capable of making the most of it. And when preparation finally met opportunity, the world would begin to discover what Morgan Freeman had spent decades becoming. When preparation finally met opportunity for years, Morgan Freeman had been preparing for a moment that might never come. That was the reality. People often look back at successful careers and assume the outcome was inevitable. They imagine a clear path leading toward greatness. But from Freeman's perspective, there was never any certainty, only preparation, only persistence, only the decision to keep showing up. Then something remarkable happened. The opportunity he had spent decades waiting for finally appeared. Not as a grand announcement, not as an overnight transformation, but as a series of chances to prove what he had been quietly developing for years. And when those opportunities arrived, Morgan Freeman was ready. That detail is important, because opportunities alone do not create success. Every day, opportunities pass through the hands of people who are unprepared to use them. What transformed Freeman's life was not the arrival of opportunity. It was the fact that decades of discipline had prepared him to recognize and maximize it. Suddenly, the skills he had built in obscurity became visible. The emotional depth, the patience, the ability to command attention without forcing it, the authenticity that audiences immediately trusted. These qualities had not appeared overnight. They had been accumulating year after year while nobody was paying attention. Now the world was finally beginning to see them. The performances became stronger. The roles became more significant. The industry started noticing what had been hiding in plain sight for years. And something fascinating occurred. People began referring to Morgan Freeman as a breakthrough success, a rising star, an emerging talent. Yet those descriptions missed the truth entirely. There was nothing sudden about his rise. The public was witnessing the result of decades, not months, not years. Decades. The breakthrough was only visible because the preparation had already been completed. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of success. The world sees the moment. It rarely sees the process. It celebrates the arrival while ignoring the journey. Morgan Freeman's story reminds us that breakthroughs often appear dramatic only because the preparation happened in private. To outside observers, everything seemed to be changing quickly. For Freeman, the change had started years earlier. The opportunity simply revealed it. But the most surprising chapter was still ahead, because the very thing that many people believed would hold him back forever was about to become one of his greatest strengths. The years, the age, the time he once feared he had lost. Soon, Morgan Freeman would discover that what looked like a disadvantage was actually the secret advantage that made him impossible to replace. Why his age became his greatest advantage. For most of his life, Morgan Freeman believed he was racing against time. Every year that passed seemed to increase the distance between where he was and where he wanted to be. Hollywood celebrated youth, new faces, fresh discoveries. The industry rarely spoke about patience. It rarely rewarded waiting. And for a long time, age appeared to be a problem he could not solve. Then something unexpected happened. The very years he once viewed as an obstacle began to reveal their true value. Because while younger actors possessed energy, Morgan Freeman possessed something different: perspective, depth, presence, the kind of qualities that cannot be developed quickly. They must be earned. Life had become his greatest teacher. The disappointments he endured, the uncertainty he survived, the dreams he protected through decades of struggle, all of it had shaped the way he understood people. And that understanding became visible every time he stepped in front of a camera. Audiences felt it immediately. There was something authentic about him, something difficult to explain but impossible to ignore. He did not seem like a man pretending to understand life. He seemed like a man who had actually lived it. That distinction mattered, because great acting is not simply about memorizing lines, it is about communicating truth. And truth often comes from experience. The years that once felt lost had given Freeman access to emotions that younger performers had not yet encountered: patience, regret, wisdom, resilience, acceptance, hope, not as concepts, as realities. When he portrayed a character carrying pain, audiences believed him. When he portrayed strength, they believed that too, because those emotions were no longer performances. They were reflections of a life fully lived. The irony was extraordinary. For decades, he had worried that age was closing doors. In reality, age was preparing him for roles that demanded exactly what he had become. The world did not need another young actor. The world needed Morgan Freeman, the version forged through time, the version shaped by hardship, the version that could bring an unmatched level of credibility and humanity to every role he touched. Suddenly, the years made sense. The delay made sense. Even the struggles began to look different. What once appeared to be disadvantages had become competitive advantages. And as his career continued to grow, another transformation was taking place. Morgan Freeman was no longer simply earning recognition as an actor. He was becoming something much larger: a voice, a presence, a symbol, a figure whose influence would eventually extend far beyond the movies themselves. The voice that the world could no longer ignore. There are successful actors, there are famous actors, and then there are people who become something far rarer. They become trusted. At some point in Morgan Freeman's career, his influence began to extend beyond the characters he portrayed. Audiences were no longer simply watching his performances. They were listening to him, trusting him, paying attention whenever he spoke. It wasn't because he demanded attention, quite the opposite. His presence carried a calm authority that felt earned rather than manufactured. By now, the decades of struggle had left a visible mark on the man he had become. Not a mark of bitterness, not a mark of resentment, a mark of understanding. When people heard Morgan Freeman speak, they sensed something many public figures struggle to project: authenticity. He didn't sound like someone trying to convince the world he was important. He sounded like someone who no longer needed to. That distinction gave his words unusual power. His voice became one of the most recognizable in the world. Filmmakers sought it. Audiences respected it. Narrators studied it. But the real story wasn't his voice itself. The real story was what the voice represented. Every sentence carried the weight of decades. The years of uncertainty, the years of obscurity, the years of persistence. People were hearing much more than a voice. They were hearing experience. This explains why Morgan Freeman occupied a unique place in popular culture. He wasn't merely admired for what he had achieved, he was respected for what he had endured. Many celebrities become famous, few become symbols. Morgan Freeman gradually became a symbol of something larger than entertainment: patience, perseverance, dignity. The idea that success does not need to arrive quickly in order to be meaningful. And that message resonated with millions of people, especially those who felt left behind, those who worried they were too old, too late, too forgotten. His very existence challenged those fears, because every appearance served as a reminder that timelines are often illusions. Life rarely unfolds according to our schedules. Sometimes the most important chapters arrive much later than expected, and sometimes those chapters become the most powerful ones. By now, Morgan Freeman had achieved something remarkable. He had become impossible to ignore. Not through noise, not through controversy, not through relentless self-promotion, but through consistency. The same consistency that carried him through years when nobody was paying attention. Yet the greatest lesson of his story was still waiting. Because when people looked at Morgan Freeman's success, they saw the destination. What they often missed was the deeper meaning hidden beneath it, a meaning that completely transformed the way his entire journey should be understood. Success rewrote the meaning of his entire life. When people look at Morgan Freeman's life today, they often focus on the achievements, the acclaimed films, the awards, the recognition, the legendary status. But if that is all they see, they miss the most important part of the story. Because success did something unexpected, it rewrote the meaning of everything that came before it. The years of rejection no longer looked like failure. They looked like preparation. The years of waiting no longer looked like wasted time. They looked like training. The obstacles no longer appeared to be barriers. They appeared to be teachers. This is what makes Morgan Freeman's journey so powerful. His success didn't erase the difficult years. It gave them purpose. Looking backward, every setback became part of a larger pattern. Every disappointment contributed something valuable. Every delay added another layer to the person he was becoming. And perhaps that is the lesson most people need to hear. We often judge our lives too early. We experience a setback and immediately label it failure. We encounter a delay and assume we are falling behind. We compare our timeline to someone else's and conclude that we missed our opportunity. Morgan Freeman's story challenges all of those assumptions, because for decades his life looked incomplete. The dream seemed distant, the future seemed uncertain, the results seemed disappointing. Yet beneath the surface, something extraordinary was happening. A foundation was being built, a character was being forged, a future was quietly taking shape. One day, the world would see the results. But long before that happened, the process was already underway. That is why his story resonates with so many people, not because everyone wants to become a famous actor, but because everyone understands waiting. Everyone understands doubt. Everyone understands the fear that their efforts may never be rewarded. Morgan Freeman became living proof that a delayed outcome is not the same as a denied outcome, that timing matters, that perseverance matters, that growth often happens long before recognition arrives. And perhaps the most remarkable truth of all is this: if Morgan Freeman had quit during any of those difficult years, the world would never have known what it was missing: the iconic performances, the unforgettable voice, the wisdom he came to represent. None of it would have existed, not because he lacked talent, but because talent alone was never the deciding factor. Persistence was. His legacy was built one decision at a time: the decision to continue, the decision to believe, the decision to keep moving forward when there was no evidence that success was close. And in the end, that may be the real story of Morgan Freeman. Not the story of a man who became famous, but the story of a man who refused to surrender his dream long enough for the world to finally recognize it.